Hello, friends, and welcome to this program from your university, the University of North Carolina at Asheville. I'm Bill Massey, Vice Chancellor for Alumni and Development. Recently, I had the extremely pleasurable opportunity to visit with Dr. Les Perce, who is president of the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. Dr. Perce was in Asheville to receive the honorary degree at this year's commencement exercises at UNC Asheville. Many of us at times wonder, what are the liberal arts? What is the role of a university within its community? How is a university useful in the economic development and vitality and cultural development of our community, state, and nation? What is the future of higher education in North Carolina and in the world? I am confident that you're going to find my conversation with Dr. Les Perce both enjoyable and informative. And so I invite you now to a conversation with Dr. Les Perce, President, Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. It is a tremendous opportunity, Les, to welcome you to Asheville from the West Coast and to have had the opportunity at commencement this year on May 16th to make you an honorary Doctor of Letters from the University of North Carolina at Asheville.
Well, thank you. It's been a tremendous, it was a tremendous honor.
Thank you. Want to start by asking you to talk with us a little about a definition of the liberal arts education as you live it and experience it at the Evergreen State College in Washington, but also as you know it as a leader in the liberal arts, higher liberal arts education community nationwide. For those friends who may not be familiar with the term, what does the liberal arts mean?
Well, when we think of the liberal arts, we think of the opportunity for students to take advantage of the arts and science in a very rich, connected sort of way. To have an education that allows them to be in reasonably small classes with teachers that are focusing on teaching in their disciplines. And also to be involved and have the opportunity for research as they do work in the undergraduate level. But it's our hope that it allows for a very rich engagement of students in their education in a manner that does not tend to be the case in larger institutions. There are many fine, private, small institutions that offer this level of an education for students. And being a part of the Council of Public Liberal Arts Colleges, the Evergreen State College and the University of North Carolina at Asheville are both connected to a group of 25 institutions around the country that have these principles that we operate on. A residential life experience for these students, the size of an institution that is relatively small. It ranges ideally up to 5,000. In some cases that's larger, but has a very clear focus on teaching and integrating the various disciplines into the experience that students have. And we've worked actively in each of our states to be designated the liberal arts college. So those are the characteristics you'll find. We're small. We have attempted in most cases to convince the legislature and the citizens to support us in a strong way that allows a smaller number of students to have a very real, deep, and rich engagement with faculty in such a way that their experience is very intense and very productive to their education.
Thank you. I understand then the environmental differences that create a liberal arts college, the environment in which the study takes place. What are some of the characteristics of the process of delivery of a curriculum in the liberal arts college?
Well, it varies tremendously, and I'd have to say that the Evergreen State College, which I've been associated with now for over 15 years, we are unique in that we have a very rich interdisciplinary program that's designed totally interdisciplinary. Unlike most of the institutions, like Asheville, that is 82 years old now, we're only not quite 40 years old. So we're a product of the late 60s, at a time when around the country people were questioning the effectiveness of higher education delivery. And we had a mandate to think innovatively and think differently than what was the tradition. We have no departments. We have no grades in the sense of A, B, C grades. Every program is largely integrated, bringing different disciplines together in a seminar, small setting with an intensive group of students that in many cases will last a whole year, or at least 2 or 3 quarters. The idea being that by being able to put the students at the center of that educational experience in a very intense way, with a variety of faculty in different disciplines, they have the opportunity to see faculty model their own discipline, but also see how it fits in the world. And of course, our goal is to have students begin to experience their education as they experience the world, and that's interdisciplinarily. We don't, in our lives, we aren't confronted with only mathematical problems or sociological problems. The question is, and what we try to do at Evergreen, is to build themes around problems and challenges that apply the various disciplines in a rich and powerful way. So we teach the expectation that a student not only should be able to master the theory, but a very important part of the liberal arts experience is how they then apply that in the real world. So you'll find that in all of our institutions, there's a real mix of community service, undergraduate research, and of course the applied theory that's involved in all of those things, but mixed together in a way that at the end the student can see how it applies in the real world. They gain confidence in themselves, their ability to be able to think questions through, and in our case at Evergreen, by having the faculty do their work interdisciplinarily, there's a point in time when a sociologist sits in a class of a computer scientist reading the same books that the computer scientist has in his discipline as a student. Students have an opportunity to see faculty as students as well, because they begin to learn that, faculty members don't know everything. They know their discipline, but to see them also learning and being engaged with them, it really reinforces the idea of being a lifelong learner and the possibility of learning things you think you know nothing about. So it builds confidence. It builds a way of thinking in the world and knowing in the world that makes it a very extraordinary experience. But more importantly, what it does, we really believe that within the seminar and within group workshops and with community work in teams, that students learn a very important thing. It's how to negotiate a world of difference, how to resolve problems with a student that has a different opinion or comes from a different culture, has different ways of knowing, and you both have to work on a common goal to be solved. In that kind of a relationship, it begins to open up a person's mind to the fact that they're going to be working and living and developing in a world where people have different ways of thinking about things, different ways of coming at problems, different strengths, different weaknesses. And the people that are really effective in the world are those that honor those differences, but can think critically about how they can apply the strengths that people have to solve problems. The culmination of that is, I think, a real deep sense of confidence. And what we really want in all of our liberal education and all of our programs in COPLAX are our students to come out with a deep love, long time enthusiasm about learning. And that is really the ultimate goal that we have in exposing students and having them take advantage of a liberal arts education, because it's broad and it has an opportunity to be deep and intense, and it covers quantitative issues, it covers the expressive arts and the humanities, and it covers technology ideally, and hopefully the student that walks out the door can begin to integrate how those things will work in their lives in the future.
Well, Les, correct me if I'm wrong, but
I think what you have eloquently stated completely rejects the perception that some may hold that the liberal arts is the cloistered tower.
Yeah.
I've heard you describe something much deeper, richer, more robust, that is actually not just even about the present, but is very inclined to preparing students for a lifelong of learning about a world that has not yet completely revealed itself to us.
Well, I think you said that very well. You know, the real challenge is, and particularly it's a challenge for public institutions, particularly those of us that have chosen to have the liberal arts mission in our states. There's huge tension and real demand for being responsive to the economic demands in communities. And oftentimes those demands fall in the areas of technology, the obvious growth and power and importance of computers and how we use them, how we apply them, engineering, that oftentimes are the symbols of the drivers of an economy. The funny thing about that is that, you know, when I talk with business groups, early on, before our reputation in the Council of Public Liberal Arts College had grown to where it is now, people would say to me, "Well, you don't give grades," you know, and that translated to them into a lack of rigor, or, you know, they used to say, "Is it basket weaving?" Like, you know. And my response was, "No, we don't give grades. We do like you do in business. We evaluate our students and we tell them if they are improving here, if they're weak here, or if they don't make the grade and they lose their job." And they got that. I said, we're trying to prepare them from a world where they won't get A's and B's. We're trying to prepare them for the world that you've created in the world of business. And then I say to them, how many of you went to a small private school? 60%, 70% of those business executives will raise their hand. And I say to them, so why shouldn't the average kid in any state whose parents don't have the money, don't have the ability to be able to access the education you were able to access, why shouldn't a state have one of their institutions as a mission that provides that opportunity for a student that wants to have that experience? It's because you went to a private small college, because it gave you the broad tools to be able to be grounded as a great writer, reader, thinker, and then you went on and got an MBA or an engineering degree or a graduate degree, and it's no different for our students. I said, but that said, the reality is that the liberal arts produce most of the people that go out the door and go on to work even at the undergraduate level, even though they aren't in the specialty areas. And we have institutions that have that mission for the student that's decided, I want to be an engineer, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to apply that genius I have in that capacity. But I'll tell you, the greatest engineers that I've known that have gone on to do great things, the former governor of the state of Washington, Dan Evans, a senator and a phenomenal guy, former president of our institution, is a guy that not only brought the technical skills, but brought a wealth of power in terms of interpersonal skills, deep knowledge in culture and arts, along with the quantitative skills. Those people are very, very powerful individuals and contribute phenomenally to a democracy. And, you know, that's what the liberal arts are about, and that's my message. My message is that it's not that simple. I understand when the economy becomes difficult and we really do need to make sure that people have jobs, we say we're for it, we're in the middle of it, and we do our parts as well. But there are different venues to meet the multiple needs that we have in our society and the educational experience. And, you know, that's our argument for the liberal arts.
Friends, our guest today is Dr. T. Les Perce, the president of the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, and one of the outstanding leaders of public liberal arts education in America. Les, you've referenced the Evergreen State College experience and the UNC Asheville experience. I think it may be easy for most of the viewers in the community to assume that every state in the Union is fortunate to have a legislature or a General Assembly or an electorate that support the idea that there is a place for a designated liberal arts college. Although our institutions are on opposite coast of the country, could you give us a perspective on, are we unusual? Is this the usual?
Well,
or how does that stand?
It all depends. To give you a sense, there are 25 institutions that are part of the Council of Public Liberal Arts Colleges. We have one in California and Oregon and Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama. I'm not going to, New Jersey, it gives you an idea, Wisconsin, Missouri, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. So they go on, and we have 25, and in Canada, in Alberta, we have a school that is also a member of our group. Every state does not have a public liberal arts college or that designation. And it really has depended on the philosophy of that state in terms of how it's structured themselves. That's what's so exciting when we all get together, because there's huge variation in all of our experiences. There are institutions that have no graduate programs. Good examples is the Evergreen State College. And when you think that in most cases we're arguing, allow us to be small, allow us to be intense, and to some degree, invest that bit of extra dollars in us to allow us to be that. When you have a population that's growing and you have tremendous pressure for access, it's very easy, particularly in a world where culturally in the U.S., for us, psychologically, bigger is better. And I've often had people say to me, well, you qualify to be a university now, the Evergreen State University. When are you going to change your name? Well, we aren't going to change our name. I said, we know that we rank among the college institutions with 4 graduate programs. That could well be a university, but we're the Evergreen State College because that's our niche. And sometimes it's hard for people to realize that. So all of us have this common tension that occurs. Population growing, the need for access. So we say, let's negotiate a number for us within our mission. We have been fortunate enough with our legislature to be able to do that. But the reality really is that the pressure comes and goes to become something different based on the political demands and the economic situation in which we're in. For Evergreen, and I think without a doubt for Asheville, and I think our other sister colleges are finding that having a niche that is different from a land-grant institution that does research, a flagship that does research, or a comprehensive regional institution, having a niche is a powerful, powerful tool. And I think in hard times you begin to see it, and as we become better known, people know why they want to go to be a part of the experience they'll have at Asheville or at Evergreen or at Truman State or at Keene State, at Sonoma, and it has served us well. But, you know, every political cycle, there's a different issue there. And we recognize that as a challenge because it'd be easy to say, you got 1,000 acres at Evergreen and you have this beautiful campus and you've got these talented faculty. If we just multiplied that by about 3 and bumped you to 15,000, think what a great thing it'll be for the state. Well, it would be a different thing for the state. But what we argue is that it's important to have this niche in the mixture of higher education. And I think that's the argument you hear from most of us. But we are very diverse and come from very different political philosophies in our state.
Well, I think perhaps a lesson for all of us who are listening to this program and as North Carolinians is certainly to appreciate, perhaps as never before, the value that our General Assembly has provided to us historically throughout the state of having a system of universities that recognizes that different students will find different environments for learning and excelling and finding their own gifts and allowing them to do so. And it is not every state that has done that or understands that. And Dr. Peirce, clearly at Evergreen, you do have that wonderful relationship as we certainly enjoy here in North Carolina. So
It's one of the real treasures both of us have, no question about it.
it absolutely is. Friends, I want to ask Dr. Peirce to tell us how the grandson of a bronco rider, that would be in the rodeo, you're correct, grows up to be president of one of the nation's leading public liberal arts colleges. Let me ask you to unpack that a little for us, Les.
Well, my mother's side of the family are Westerners. I come from Pocatello, Idaho. My grandparents followed the Union Pacific Railroad out to Pocatello, Idaho in 1910. The railroad, as you know, was provided a great opportunity for a whole wave of first-generation people, immigrants and people of color, to find a livable wage. And Pocatello, Idaho at that time was the largest railroad yard west of Omaha for the Union Pacific, and was so for many decades. And they came to be there, but my grandfather, as my grandmother always said, was horse crazy. He was a serious cowboy, bronc buster, broke horses, trained horses. In the winter, he'd work for the railroad, and then when the weather changed, he'd break horses to raise money. And my grandmother was a school teacher. She was trained at Lincoln Normal School, one of the historically black colleges after the emancipation. She graduated when she was 16, and she said to me, "Tommy, grades weren't like they are now." Mm-hmm. And she taught and finished when she was 16, met my grandfather, and came west. When she was probably 90, she lived to be 101, I said to her, we called her Ninny, I said, "Ninny, how does a school teacher end up with a cowboy?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know," she said, and she got a smile and a twinkle in her eyes. She said, "I guess the cowboy just made the school teacher throw her books out the window." And they came west, and my mother was the youngest of 9 kids, and my father came out in World War II from Virginia. They had an air base there, and met my mother and liked the West and decided he wasn't going home back to Virginia or the Washington, D.C. area. And he stayed west, and we became the Western Peirces. All the rest are in Virginia and the district in Maryland area. And it was through my mother and father and my grandmother who, even though she couldn't teach because of segregation in the West, continued to tutor her children and to be a writer of letters for people that were illiterate in the turn of the last century. And there were many, white and black, as she described it, and she'd write home the letters for them. And when they sent money home, it was a huge thing to be able to have that kind of skill. She was the secretary for the Allen Chapel AME Church there for 55 years or more. You get lost when someone lives 101 years, you really realize that's a really long time. And if you were blessed like she was, she would have been well into her early 80s before she stopped serving as the secretary. She was a model for all of us, and because of her, my mother was, and my father came from a family that had a deep sense of education, even though they were only high school graduates, both of them. Their expectations for their kids were that they would go to college. And it was a clear message on a continual basis. My grandmother was a reader. She had books everywhere. She used to say, when your father went on the grandfather went on rodeo circuit, he used to say to me, "Well, Ma, as long as you have a bunch of chickens and a library full of books, you're just happy out here in the sagebrush." So I went to college because that was the expectation. And from then I went on to graduate school, and it became part of the expectation of my mother and father, who were very active in the civil rights movement in their community. And they modeled that for all five of us. All of us went to college and on to graduate school. And so we have rich, different lives as kids. But it was just a real deep message about not just the fact that working hard at learning was a tool for you to be able to get a good job, and from that to be able to make sure you could take care of a family in the economic sense. But just through their lives, my grandmother, my mother and father, they modeled that of what you can do with what you learn, how you can think about things, how you can engage yourself. And as I tell our students at Evergreen, the real importance of an education is what you can ultimately contribute to the democracy to make it better. That it's not just simply an isolated tool for you to be able to go to work and to be able, and the work is fine. It's important to feel, it's an important part of self to feel self-actualized, and that you have the ability to take care of yourself and your family. And then, what about your role, and how do you integrate who you are, your self-being, into a pursuit of things that are greater than ourselves? It's what my grandmother taught. It's what my folks have modeled all their lives. They're now in their mid-80s, and I've been blessed with a variety of jobs in my life before I ultimately ended up with this presidency, and I've been blessed to really enjoy every one of those. But each one of them taught me more and really prepared me for the work I do now.
Friends, I think you can clearly see why Dr. Peirce is considered a leader in American education. When he spoke to the UNC Asheville graduates on May 16th, he told them that the importance of education, of higher education, and the degrees that they were receiving on that in their commencement were not just so that they could make money, but so they could make lives, and so they could make communities. And the higher education was a privilege, it was a gift that had been earned or given to them. It seems to me, Les, it's also a responsibility from what you've said and what your grandmother and your parents have invested in your thinking. You don't have the right as a citizen to disregard the role of citizenship.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's not an option. And it's not a requirement that you have a college degree
That's right.
to be a good
That's
citizen.
Right. That's right.
But to be a participatory citizen, to engage in a civil society, is something that we all have a responsibility to. I know that's key at Evergreen.
It's key at Evergreen, and it's key in terms of when I talk about we talk about teaching beyond and teaching about and for significant difference. Mm-hmm. That means being able to teach in an experience that ensures that students are able to have a wide range of tolerance for difference in all of its categories. And, much of what I learned in my formative years, in the church, in my community, came from people that did not have formal educations. But they're the ones that organize the events, they organize the programs that allowed me to learn. Mm-hmm. And, I learned a long time ago from my mother and father that, they're a couple of the smartest people I have ever known, intellectually, what they know, their interest in the world. Even with high school educations, their ability to read and think and figure out where to get things and how to move within a society of people that know things were the models to me. And the real drivers in our community are not necessarily people that have a baccalaureate degree or certainly not a doctorate. I know that the people that really are the engine behind the future of our democracy are the everyday person that has gotten a grounded education in high school, or maybe they've been trained technically, that also realize that they also have a responsibility within their community and their society and within our democracy. Mm-hmm. So it isn't, and it is a huge responsibility. You always hear this say from there's much expected for people that have great gifts. Well, mm-hmm. My folks or my grandmother never said that, but the message was there by the way they lived their lives. Mm-hmm. And everyone can learn that from the people that are their mentors and their family and their parents and the people that have guided them and that they've found wisdom in.
I should mention that your coming to this wisdom is not based entirely on your career as a university president or university administrator, but you've been in in the civic fiber of Pocatello, and I believe you were the first African American elected official in the state of Idaho.
Yeah.
So, and you have also been in the private sector. So, all of this coming together and synthesis of ideas and spirit and wisdom is not the result of merely thinking,
No.
but it's the experiential basis of.
Very, very powerful experiential.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question about it. That's why I say what I say about the capacity for people in their work at any level to bring to the table beyond their work their ability to add to their community perspective, because they learn from the interaction they have with people, with the challenges that people have in their work if they think about it. The ability to identify issues that impact a whole community, the ability to be able to begin to think about what do we do about that, and to translate it into something that will solve those problems. And so there's no question. I ended up in private business, ironically, because when I worked for the governor of the state of Idaho and for about 7 years in various positions as a director and a commissioner, I got tired of a guy that turned out to be a very close friend of mine. He was a potato farmer from Paul, Idaho. And he'd stand up, he'd say, "Perce, the problem with you all is that you don't know what it's like to meet a payroll." And I'd hear that every year. And at one point I finally said, I think I probably ought to find out what it's like to meet a payroll. And as fate would have it, I had an opportunity to join an engineering company as a chief operations officer. And I spent 4 years learning what it's like to meet a payroll. And it's interesting. It is, the freedom of our economic system and capitalism is something wonderful. We did marvelous, marvelous things, and I learned. I learned what it meant to be an entrepreneur and to think as an entrepreneur. And I could have stayed there, and like my colleagues now, they're all millionaires, all my old buddies that are there. But I came from higher education, and I realized that I was starving intellectually in the life of the mind. And that's ultimately, when I had an opportunity to go back and work for a president of the university, why I left, because I realized that for me, the world of the life of education and what it meant was a much more powerful draw than focusing in a narrow way in an industry that we just had great success in. That was me. And of course it reflects the differences that all of us have.
Well, speaking of experiences,
Yes.
Les Perce had an interesting experience when he boarded the plane in Washington to come to Asheville to receive his honorary degree at commencement. He was aware of the fact that North Carolina's own Doc Watson was also going to be receiving an honorary degree. And so in addition to his the things he packed in his suitcase, he also brought a ukulele with him. And Les, I understand that when you and Doc met prior to commencement at the university on May 16th, you had the opportunity to pull out your ukulele. He pulled out his guitar, and the two of you made a little music.
Well, it was, I brought the uke because I wanted him to sign it, and told him that, and
Did he do that?
And he did. Yes, he did. It was like, music has always been an important part of my life, guitar and uke, and now in more recent times. And when I found out that this idol of mine would be joining me to receive an honorary degree, I couldn't believe. I called all my friends, all my music friends, my family, and everyone, and told them. And I have to admit, on that day, as I said to the audience, I said it was a extraordinary honor to be here and to receive an honorary degree, but it was a real honor to spend that time with this national treasure. And so it was. We had a chance to sit down, and he picked up my uke and played and liked the sound, and I did a little tune for him, and he really quite enjoyed it. And of course, that day it was just a wonderful experience to have him and hear him sing with all the magic of his voice and a flat picking and finger picking style that has changed the world of folk music and bluegrass music.
Do you mind sharing with us or showing us the ukulele that he signed? And
Yes, it is. Here it is.
there you are.
There it is. It's the Kamaka is a famous Hawaiian maker, and I was fortunate enough to pick this up in Seattle, and it has a beautiful tone. And so I played this little tune for him. Let's see if I can. Gotta get my old tuxedo pressed. Gotta sew a button on my vest, 'cause tonight I've got to look my best. Old Lulu's back in town. I gotta get a $50 somewhere. I gotta shine my shoes and slick my hair. I gotta get myself a boutonniere. Old Lulu's back in town. You can tell all my chicks, all the blondes and brunettes, Mr. Otis regrets he won't be around. Well, you can tell the mailman not to call. I ain't coming home until the fall, and I might not get back home at all. Oh, Lulu's back in town. Oh, Lulu's back in town, and she's looking good. Lulu, you know that girl is back.
Thank you. How wonderful. And we'll send a copy of that to Doc Watson in case he's decided that he needs someone to sing with him on the road. I'm sure he'll be glad to consider that your audition tape,
great.
sir.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. As I'm sure you'll agree, it was a great pleasure for the University of North Carolina at Asheville to host Dr. Les Perce here at the university for commencement back in May of this year. I hope you found this conversation as enjoyable and informative as I did. And I hope that it brought some light to the concept of the liberal arts and the role of a public university in a community. We at UNC Asheville deeply appreciate the support and advocacy of the citizens of our community and state in supporting public higher education in North Carolina. Thank you very much for being a part of this.